Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight as we explore the subject of happiness. Sister Nita from the Cape Town Centre got hold of me a while ago, and she said to me, would I like to facilitate one of these Thursday evening conversations? And I said, yes, of course, what's the topic? And she said to me, what would you like to talk about? And I said, happiness. And then I thought, where did that come from? But actually, I really want to thank Nita for this opportunity, because it is just such an interesting experience being able to unpack a topic over a period of time, which is what I've had the opportunity to do. And initially I had thought, well, I'm going to present the subject in this way. But as I thought about the topic, and as I did a bit of research, talked to people about it, it was almost as if it took on a life of its own. And so what I'd like to do this evening is to share that journey with you and tell you the story of my experience with this subject. So it's a topic that I've been interested in forever. And actually earlier on in this year, I wrote in my journal, and what I wrote was, if money or resources made people happy, there would be no sad rich people. And if success and achievement made people happy, there would be no depressed rock stars, superstars, or celebrities, or these mega successful businessmen and women. And from then, you know, it was I just kept on asking myself the question over and over again, am I happy? Am I happy? And to be very honest, the answer was, yes, sometimes I'm happy, but often I don't feel happy. I feel stressed and overwhelmed and anxious and under pressure and sometimes under-resourced and all of that, those kinds of things as well. So, you know, what did it mean? What is happiness? Was I in actual fact happy, or was I just a miserable person? So, yeah, like I said, I had been grappling with it before, for a long time before I got this invitation to chat this evening. And the first thing I basically did after I said yes was I put out a message to some friends and groups that I'm part of. And I asked them two very simple questions. The first question was, define happiness. And the second question was, what makes you happy? And it was just so interesting, because on the first question, which was define happiness, the vast majority of the respondents ignored that question completely. And they went straight to what makes me happy. There were one or two profound offerings to the define happiness question. And I just want to share that with you. So the one gentleman responded. He said, happiness is to still love yourself despite your circumstances, and to know you are free within yourself. And then I got a very, very beautiful response from somebody who lives in the Knysna area. And she said, for me, I think happiness is finding joy and meaning in the simple things in life. Although things is maybe the wrong word, as I certainly don't mean stuff. I don't see it as a means to an end, i.e., to me, it's not about the pursuit of happiness. I don't think it's something to be pursued, but is rather the natural outcome when one is able to live in the moment. And then I got another pithier response, and that was living a simple life of positivity, gratitude, and contentment. So that was, in essence, the responses I got to the request to define happiness. Then in terms of the question of what makes you happy, there was a lot of commonality. There was strong threads that ran throughout. And it included things like my family, my children, my dogs, my cats, my pets, health. Good health makes me happy. Being in nature, going for walks along the beach, swimming in the ocean, that kind of thing. I got a lot of people who mentioned their religious practice brought them an immense amount of happiness. And then things like connecting with purpose, meaningful work, and then also service, serving other people. The one lady, she shared, there were two of them who really sort of went into quite some depth. The one lady said, and what makes me happy? Really countless things. Having my cat on my lap, purring while I stroke his fur, being in nature, particularly a forest with the sound of a flowing stream, laughing with friends, sharing my passion for the forest, and listening to music. And then there was a lady who shared a list. It was really beautiful. Jumping in puddles, watching the patterns in clouds, seeing sunlight twinkle on leaves, raindrops on spider webs, birds on telephone wires, watching nature take over and turn ugly things into extraordinary or quirky things of beauty. Fields of flowers, usually weeds, that fill in the spaces between railway lines. Spending time with older people and learning about their life stories. Celebrating every day that I'm alive. Dancing, making things of beauty. Learning to not sweat the small stuff and to keep the bigger picture in mind. Seeing the rainbow in every soap bubble when washing dishes. And yeah, I just thought it was such beautiful sharings, you know, and what struck me when I read through the lists that people had sent me was nowhere did it say my house or my new cell phone or my new motor car. There were no things, you know, this kind of really experiences and relationships that brought a lot of people happiness. And then there was a strong thread of, you know, an inner connection, an inner dynamic of things like spiritual practice, service, that sense of purpose that gives us meaning. Yeah, that came through very, very, very strongly. So that was the starting point in exploring the subject. I then turned to some of the research, and what I extracted from that is it's massively interesting. About 85% of the research into happiness researches happiness in terms of it being a trait as opposed to a state. Okay, so basically a fundamental of who we are as opposed to a simple experience. It also shows that on the happiness scale, the majority of people are positioned as being on the happy side of neutral. Okay, which was interesting. It shows that unfortunately, and this is the bad news, is that people have a natural negativity bias. And then what I found incredibly interesting is that there's research that Brené Brown and her team did over a period of 5 years with thousands of participants who were asked to identify emotions that they experience. And more than 80% of the respondents could only name 3 emotions. And those 3 emotions were happy, sad, and angry. So there's a book called Atlas of the Heart that was released by Brené Brown, I think, within the last year or so. And she says in that book that there's little consensus on what happiness is, and that in a large part is due to the ambiguity of the word. So myself, Brené Brown, and a whole bunch of really high-level researchers agree on that. And everybody is grappling with the question, what actually is happiness? So, I think that the difficulty with the word itself is that it encompasses more than one state of emotion. It's not if you feel peaceful, we all know what peaceful is. If you feel calm, we understand that, and there's synonyms for it, but happiness is kind of hard to pin down. So for the purpose of tonight's conversation, I believe that it encompasses several things, and those include emotional states such as a sense of well-being, contentment, gratitude, appreciation, and pleasure. So, armed with this information that I had gathered and then some, I really considered it. I thought about it. I argued with it. I really grappled with how to actually do this. I kind of at one stage regretted saying that I wanted to talk about happiness. Anyway, I woke up one morning and I got out of bed, and it was just an average, ordinary morning. And I was walking down the passage. And as I walked down this passage towards the kitchen to go get a cup of coffee, the thought suddenly popped into my head, I am happy. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? So I got my cup of coffee and I went and I sat down, and I thought, wow, this is really so interesting, because the thought came so clearly, I am happy. And I thought, yeah, I am feeling happy, and I'm feeling content and feeling that sense of well-being. But I'm also feeling stressed and overwhelmed and tired and under-resourced, and there were concerns that I had about the health of my animals, and so there was a lot of stuff actually going on. So how does this actually work? And then as I was sitting there, it came to me that this is actually the entire point. It's not either or. It's not either I'm happy or I'm sad. Either I'm happy or I'm feeling frustrated. All of these things can basically and do coexist. It's just that because of that negativity bias I mentioned that came out of the research, that sometimes the noisy emotions, and typically they're the ones that would be labeled as negative, are the ones that actually take our attention, and they basically turn down the volume on happiness and peace and all the other things that are running in the background, and they amplify themselves. So I thought, wow, this is just so interesting, because I've really always thought about it as an either or. And like I say, I had the very definite personal experience of, no, that's not what it is. Anyway, a short while later, I came across a podcast by a lady named Dr. Susan David. She's a psychologist working in America. She's originally South African. And she described and confirmed that exact experience that I'd had, that it's not an either or with emotions. It is both, or it's multifaceted. So she, like Brené Brown, recommends getting granular when we speak about our emotions, digging deep to describe what we are experiencing, and moving beyond just using the labels happy, sad, and angry. So let's move on. I personally have a kind of list of tools that I use to help me cultivate happiness and to actually amplify that positive experience. So I just want to run through that list with you all. So the first one is to take care of myself as a priority and not as an afterthought, because we just are so good at taking care of others and distracting ourselves with fixing everybody else's problems. And yet we often don't take the time to actually look after ourselves. I've spent a lot of time getting to know myself and getting to know what I need in order to take care of myself. I believe that it's absolutely imperative, if we want to have experiences of positive emotions, that we have to make conscious space for a consistent spiritual practice that includes various elements such as reflection, meditation, and then a very, very solid gratitude practice. We don't fly solo in this. We need to find community. We need to practice with community. We learn from others, and the journey is vastly easier with spiritual friends and spiritual community. And sort of connecting with the previous point of the healthy gratitude practice. I meditate quite regularly with a group. And in those sessions, they always say, just do a whip around and introduce yourself and mention one or two things, or one thing within the last day or two that made you happy. And when I first started meditating with them, I was like, I hope they don't ask me next, because what was it exactly that made me happy in the last day or so? But, it just reminded me of the necessity to actively be present to all of the wonderful, beautiful things in our lives, and all of the many things that we have to be grateful for. To feed the body and, of course, the mind. consciously. So to choose healthy options in terms of what we're feeding both body and mind. And then something that I've been doing for quite a while now, I think I've spoken about it before, is really trying to simplify things. To consciously consume, to declutter physically and emotionally, to go inside every now and then into my inner space and see what's in there that no longer serves me. What baggage am I carrying that I really need to put down? Experimentation with what I'm learning. You know, so we have these conversations and we attend these groups and meditations, but actually afterwards to think about it and to work with it and to see how it fits and, you know, how it changes my experience. Practice connecting with emotions and learning to be granular, learning to actually, when you're going through something, to say, what is it? What is it that I'm feeling? And to actively name those emotions. And it's just such an interesting process when you do it, because just sometimes by allowing space for things, one calms down. And then I am absolutely convinced of the fact that happiness and contentment and gratitude dwell in the present moment. So as much as possible, my personal practice is to try and stay present, to stay in the now, and not to project myself backward or forward. And then, to accept difficulty when it comes, because it doesn't matter how much spiritual effort we make. At the end of the day, the challenges come. And sometimes all we have to do is put our hand on our heart and say, this too. And to accept, not to fight, just to say, yes, this too has a place. I personally have found that extremely useful in the last few months. And then finally, don't take anything, including yourself, too seriously. You know, lightly, childlikely. I'd like to close this section of the discussion with a quote that I really, really love. I found it years ago, and it really resonated. And it goes like this: happiness cannot be traveled to, owned, earned, worn, or consumed. Happiness is the spiritual experience of living every moment with love, grace, and gratitude. And that is a quote from a brother by the name of Dennis Wakely. I think he's got it bang on the head. Okay, so I'd like to now take you through a very short guided meditation. So take a moment to make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes if you wish, or softly gaze at a point in front of you and turn your attention gently away from the external. Go inside. Focus your attention for a moment on your breath. Follow the in-breath . And then gently exhale. Breathing in, I am aware of this breath. Breathing out, I completely release all tension. In breath, out breath. Completely aware and completely relaxed. As I sit quietly looking inward, I see my mind as a vast ocean with many waves. I observe the waves. Some of them are tiny, and some of them are enormous. And I see how at times they threaten to engulf me. I see how sometimes I get confused and see myself as the wave. I observe them in a detached way. And as I watch, I become aware of the fact that I am not the waves. The waves are just emotions that ebb and flow, that come and go, that shift and change. But beneath them, beneath those waves, there is something that is eternal, beautiful, and absolute. It is consistent and unshifting. It is the soul, radiant, luminous, incandescent. Beneath the surface, undisturbed, I see the eternal truth of who I am. And that being is pure, loving, powerful, peaceful, and blissful. As I shine the light of pure awareness on the eternal self, I feel such a rush of gratitude flood through me. Warm rays of light and love flow from the very heart of my being. I bathe in this awareness. I dance in its sparkling light, and I am transformed and renewed by the grace of this state. Om Shanti. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share some of the thoughts that I've been having over the last while, and the experimentation that I've been doing with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Mm.